Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. I appreciate everybody who's here and a part of the show. We are live streaming here at the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Ezra Kaplan here joining me from Fox 12 Investigates. And, you know, obviously this is something that we have been talking about a lot, as you can see there on the lower screen. What we're going to do here in this segment is talk about, well, that ICE facility there in South Portland and the deployment or non-deployment of National Guard troops to that area. There's a lot that's been going on with this. It's confusing. And for everybody out there, you know, you're not alone if you're not quite understanding what this court ruling means, what this one means, all the different facets and assets that are playing in here into this. And that's why Ezra is here to help break this down for us, to help make it make sense of where we're at. Currently, no National Guard troops are deployed to South Portland, to that ICE facility.
That's right. I think calling it a legal saga is the right way to describe it. There is a lot going on. I've kind of broken it down into three prongs. There's kind of three things going on at the same time right here. So do we want to do...
Yeah, you want to switch over here?
So we're gonna try to break it down visually so everybody can take a look. So we're gonna switch cameras.
Let's go ahead and get that over there. Just once. Okay, of course, there we go. Hey. The tech works.
All right. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a little bit of a flow chart here of how we got to where we are today in terms of all the legal shenanigans, everything going on. So let's start at the very beginning. So back here on September 28th, that is when the state of Oregon and the city of Portland sued the Trump administration over the initial federalization of troops and the plans to send them to Portland. So this is basically asking a judge to say, hey, the federalization of troops under what's called Title 10 was illegal in this case and shouldn't be done. So that's like the core lawsuit underlying everything else that I'm about to kind of explain here. So before we get into all this, it's important to know that this core lawsuit is still progressing and is progressing despite all the other things that we're going to discuss. And this now has a trial date of October 29th through the 31st. 3 days are designated for this trial. This will be a bench trial, so that means there's no jury. There's just a judge who will hear from both sides arguing why either the troop deployment is legal or isn't legal. It's the same thing as a normal trial that you might have seen on TV, but it's just with a judge, no jury involved. So the judge has designated about 3 days for this trial. It's going to go right up to Halloween, and what we don't know about that trial is exactly when we're going to get a decision. There's a possibility that the judge, Karen Immergut, could rule from the bench, but it's not super likely. We think she'll probably take it under advisement. So that's all going on in one case. Now, while they're going towards trial, there's also been some stuff going on kind of in the interim. So the first thing is right after the lawsuit was filed, the judge issued 2 temporary restraining orders. And if you look back at some of our coverage, it was kind of complex. There was one, the initial one just blocked the Oregon National Guard from being federalized. The second one broadened it and said no federalized troops from any of the state's National Guards can be brought into Portland. The Trump administration then appealed that temporary restraining order to the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court. So,
real quick to clarify, so it was just the first one, right, that they appealed?
Right, and so all they appealed was one of these 2 temporary restraining orders. The first one saying that you can't send Oregon National Guard into Portland. They didn't address the second one. They kind of said, we're going to just ask for this first one to be appealed, and then we'll go back to the lower court and say, look, if they ruled with us, which they ended up doing, you should just dissolve the second one. That's gotten more complicated now in hindsight. So they appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. A panel of 3 judges heard arguments on that. They ended up reversing that TRO, that temporary restraining order. Now, they only reversed one of the 2 temporary restraining orders. So that first one is now reversed, the one that allowed Oregon National Guard to be deployed. But the second temporary restraining order actually applies to all states, so it's much broader. And since that one is still standing, the Trump administration cannot send in National Guard yet. So once that order was reversed, the Trump administration went back to the lower court and said, look, the appellate court said that that you were wrong in issuing this temporary restraining order. please dissolve or remove the second temporary restraining order so that we can proceed with our plans to deploy troops to Portland. That was asked for by the Trump administration. Now where we're at with that is that it's dragging out a little bit. The judge has asked for a little bit more information than what she initially said that she would need to make a decision on whether to dissolve that second temporary restraining order. At this point, the next thing that we now know is that she just scheduled this morning a hearing for Friday to discuss whether or not that temporary restraining order should be dissolved. So from now until Friday, nothing's going to change with that temporary restraining order, that second temporary restraining order. And so that means that no troop deployment can happen in Portland. Simultaneously, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but while that was going on, as soon as that appellate court reversed the first temporary restraining order, a process was started that's called an en banc rehearing. And what that essentially is an appeal of the appeal. And that was started by actually another judge on the Ninth Circuit. So just to back up a little bit, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals generally, and this is what happened here, you appeal to that Ninth Circuit, a panel of 3 randomly assigned judges hears that, they come together and issue an opinion, kind of like what you might be used to with the Supreme Court. An en banc rehearing is only it's a process that if it is successful and the judges decide to actually have this, it elevates it and they actually rehear the case in front of a larger panel. In this case, it would be the Chief Justice and then 10 randomly assigned judges from the Ninth Circuit. So it'd be a panel of 11 judges all rehearing the case. It's pretty rare for that to happen. An en banc hearing is not common. However, this is exactly the kind of case where it could be, it could happen. Now, whether it's overturned or not, we are not even close to knowing which way the judges would rule. But because of the significance of this case, the way it was written, and in addition, an important factor is one of the 3 judges that was dissenting in the opinion wrote that she supported an en banc, basically called for an en banc hearing. And so because you have one of the judges on the panel itself saying, hey, other judges, we should take a look at this, I think we're getting it wrong, that does elevate the likelihood of it actually being a successful en banc hearing. So, long story short, let's sum it all up here. There's 3 things going on right now. At the core, we are still waiting for the trial, which will happen on October 29th. That's going to move forward. We don't have any indication that that's going to change. And that's really the underlying question of this whole thing. Is it legal or illegal for Trump to federalize troops and send them to Portland in this situation? That's one prong. The other one is that second temporary restraining order. The only thing right now that's holding the Trump administration back from actually deploying those federalized National Guardsmen. That we know is that there's a hearing on Friday, so we'll be watching for that. Unclear of when we're going to get any answers there. And then separately, we're going to be watching the Ninth Circuit, which is actually based out of San Francisco. They have a deadline of tonight for any briefings from any parties about whether or not there should be an en banc hearing. We don't have a timeline of when that'll happen, but we'll be watching that as well. So these are kind of the 3 prongs of the legal saga of whether or not it's legal or illegal for the Trump administration to federalize National Guard troops and send them into Portland.
Whew. Okay, that's a lot. I do have some questions.
Please, yes, absolutely.
And we'll just keep it here on the board
Okay,
for everybody so everybody can see that. Okay, so the trial's happening regardless. October 29th, we have that. Now, the Friday hearing about this second TRO, restraining order, say during that the judge decides, you know what, I'm going along with what happened before. We're going to go ahead and repeal that or dissolve that, excuse me. And so there are no more restraining orders.
Right.
That would open it up for troops to come in.
That's right.
Now, what about the en banc? Is that tied to that in any way, shape, or form?
It is actually. So in the scheduling order that we got this morning about this Friday hearing, Judge Karen Immergut specifically asked the parties to be ready to discuss the implications of an en banc hearing at the Ninth Circuit level on her decision here at the district level. So we know that the two are now crossing paths. So
Gotcha.
I know I said that these are all kind of happening parallel. There is overlap, right?
Okay.
So there is overlap between these two. In this case, Judge Karen Immergut is interested in how the appellate judges are doing their work and how it may impact her work. Just to throw a whole nother curveball in here, we also know that the Supreme Court is now looking at taking on a case in Chicago that has a lot of parallels that could have implications here. That's not as directly influencing kind of how things are progressing, but it's something that we know that the appellate judges will be paying attention to.
So, yes, and I think we should talk about that too here in just a second, just to like clarify that for everybody, because
Sure.
of so many things
Yeah.
that are out there. And I'm sorry, Ezra, thank you for answering all
Absolutely.
these questions, because I know I'm
Absolutely.
going over stuff you've gone over, but just to
all
clarify
good.
for everyone, because I know it's confusing, and I also know people are going to be asking me this later in my personal life. They'll be like, you know what's going on.
A lot of people,
So
it's a very confusing
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and it is for everybody, and thank you for all this work, and I love being able to see it. So the en banc, do we have any kind of timeline on when or if they will decide to go forward with that?
We don't.
We don't. So we don't know.
What I
This
can
could be
tell you
whenever they
about
want.
that is that with the en banc hearing, the way that it works is that the first part is already in progress, and that is requesting briefings. That's requesting everybody who's a party, whether they are what's called a friend of the court, an amicus brief, or a party that's actually involved in the plaintiffs or defendants, asking them to submit their briefings, their arguments for one way or the other. So it's kind of like an information gathering step. So that's going on right now. After that, there is a closed door, we're not aware of it, internal vote of all the judges on the Ninth Circuit. And I think it's about 50 judges.
Okay.
It's a lot of judges.
A lot of judges.
I'm not entirely sure. But that is put to a vote internally. All the judges vote on whether or not this should move forward as an en banc rehearing. If that vote is successful, that's when they pick that panel of 10 judges and the Chief Justice to start the process and to move forward towards actually having that rehearing. So
Now, since we have the actual trial happening,
one thing just to
Yeah.
add,
Oh, go ahead.
normally with the en banc, it is actually a scheduled thing, because normally at the appellate level, things don't move fast. The appellate level is slow, it's methodical, things just don't move quickly. A lot of this is happening on what's called an emergency basis, so they're breaking from their normal schedule. Normally, there is a 4 times a year, like it's a quarterly calendar for en banc hearings where they sit down and have kind of a discussion. I don't know if it's a Zoom call, I don't know how they do it, but they have a discussion where they discuss all the requests for en banc hearings once a quarter, basically. I do believe that there are mechanisms for moving this forward on an emergency basis, but we don't know how they're going to do it yet.
okay. And regardless of that, so October 29th is the date of the trial for
That's right.
the bigger trial, of
The
whether it's legal or
underlying
not.
court trial, yeah.
So if they don't decide by then would it just be kind of null and void and just wait for the trial results? Or
It's a good question.
yeah, I mean, because it seems
no.
like if they, I don't know,
It
but then it
wouldn't be
depends on
null
when
and
that's
void,
decided too.
because the
Because that
reason
could still take a while.
here's the reality. Whatever is decided here will be appealed. It'll either be appealed by whoever loses. It's almost an inevitability that this will be appealed, and so I would imagine that this being resolved would not stop the process moving forward at the Ninth Circuit appellate level. But it's a really good
Gotcha.
question, and I might need to talk to some of our law professor folks
Yeah,
that
no.
we've become very friendly with now.
But
So-
that's actually, I mean, fair. So if it is appealed, that would mean, yeah. So whoever it is going to appeal it, right?
Yeah, and the
right.
other thing is like, what we have to, it's important to know is that when you appeal, it's one thing for the appeal to be taken up or not taken up. There's generally a request for a stay, which is more or less a temporary restraining order. It's not a temporary restraining order, or it'd be a stay on any decision. So we don't know if that would happen. We don't know once there's a decision in the trial whether it'll actually immediately go into effect or if it'll kind of be paused administratively because of these appellate outstanding questions.
So at the end of the day, to determine, like, for the immediacy of it, as far as whether or not troops would be deployed or not, a lot more, it seems like, depends on that restraining order than it does that trial.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So that sounds like for people who want to know, like, is this going to happen tomorrow or next week or whatever, those are the things to look for.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like Friday will maybe...
I think Friday will be
little bit more?
insightful. I think what we'll do now. It's important to know it's actually a conference call on Friday. It's not an in-person hearing. We'll be listening into that, and I think what I'm going to be listening for is trying to get a little bit of clarity into Judge Immergut's thinking around the timeline for this, because it's important to note that in the dissenting opinion from the appellate court, Judge Graber, who's one of the senior appellate judges, basically called on her colleagues to slow it down and to allow this appellate decision to potentially get overturned. And so we know that there is a desire to slow things down. I anticipate maybe getting a better sense of that and a sense of where Judge Immergut's thinking is on Friday at that hearing, just from how she's asking questions. I think it'll be a little bit more... We'll learn a little bit about what her thinking is.
A little more illuminating on perhaps, than for Friday. Ezra, this is a lot. I do want to, but this is why it's good to have you here to go through this and understand it. And I'm gonna switch this back to the other one because I don't want to confuse this with what we were just looking at there, but that overlying issue that you talked about with the Supreme Court.
That's right.
So that has to do with the Seventh
Circuit.
This is what's going on in Chicago.
That's right.
So where are they at in their process?
I need to get a little bit more read in on that one, but I do know that.
Let me throw everything at you.
Yeah, it's totally fine. It is. I think it has been accepted to be heard by the Supreme Court, but let me get back to you on that one.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. And either way, that's probably not moving very quickly, I would imagine.
Probably,
anyway. So
probably not.
We'll do it. We'll do a separate segment. We won't speculate.
I'll come back to that one.
We'll come back to that one. So for what's happening over there in Chicago, there's a lot to follow with just what's happening here in Oregon. So there we go. If you out there have questions about this,
let me know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Send it in. Send it in to Fox 12. You can send fox12now@kptv.com an email, and if it's about this, I know everybody has opinions on it, and your opinions are your opinions. But if you have actual questions more specifically that we can address, please send those in.
Yeah, we want to. I mean, it's something
for clarity.
It's really complicated, and this is what we try to do as journalists: is take that complicated stuff and make it understandable. And so, let us know what your questions are. We want to answer them. Yeah, because we can maybe even come back and take care of that. So send those in, fox12now@kptv.com. Let us know what those questions are about the process. Again, I know everybody has their opinions. I mean, feel free to send in whatever, but it's the questions that we're looking for that particular segment. But yeah, Ezra, thank you. Absolutely. For going through this. So this is a lot to understand. And thanks everybody for joining us. This is Fox 12 Now. We live stream here at the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. So thanks for being a part of this. We're here live every weekday at 1 o'clock, and we cover a lot of different segments and topics during this show, but this is one of the things we get to do. We get to bring in, Ezra or some of our other reporters and do breakdowns of some of these stories that you can't really do faster pace on television. This is like taking the time to go through it. So that's what we're doing here with this. And thanks everybody for joining. So we'll adjourn for now, just to use that term since we're talking about courts. Pun intended. Pun intended. Very intended. So all right, thanks everybody for joining us. We will